Well, let's catch up with the economics editor of The Australian now, Adam Creighton. Good to talk to you again, Adam. Just another $250 million chalked up on the credit card today?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
$250 million additional debt for the country. Everything the government spends is additional debt for us at this stage. Is it warranted? Is it unavoidable for the entertainment industry package?
Well, look, I mean, it's inevitable politically that there's going to be these sorts of subsidy schemes proposed now. So I'm not surprised that, 250 million, like I always do a second take, it's only a million. You're not talking about billion. We're so used to talking about billions now. But look, it does all just go onto this extraordinary credit card. And, the interesting thing now is there's this huge debate in economics about, whether we have to pay back this debt or not. It's really philosophically very interesting. A lot of people think central banks can just print money and, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm a bit more conservative. I don't think there's such a thing as a free lunch there, but nevertheless, it's increasingly common, this view, that it doesn't matter, the 250 million or indeed the billions.
Well, it is scary just how much spending has been racked up, how much debt is racked up. But just on that point, with your economist brain, explain it to us in simple terms. People say that the Reserve Bank could buy up all the debt, print a lot of money and would all be fine. But wouldn't that completely devalue our currency? Wouldn't that really hurt people, especially who have saved up and maybe have money invested in the bank or in perhaps even in their own property or share portfolios?
Well, look, the rest of the advanced world has been doing this now for at least 10 years, and it hasn't prompted a consumer price inflation there. The Reserve Bank here in the past few months has effectively printed, if you like, $60 billion and bought state and federal government debt with that money. But ultimately, they do get the money from the private sector still. They have to put money in the accounts of the private banks, which are held with the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank has to pay interest on that money still. And so it's not like there's zero interest cost for the government. It's very hard to know when or if there will be an outbreak of inflation. But certainly historically, you'd think that if there is a very large increase in the money supply, which there has been, not just in Australia but around the world, then at some point it will seep into prices. But that doesn't seem to be happening yet.
I worry that in Australia we're delaying a reckoning because we've been so successful in crushing the coronavirus pandemic that we just keep spending money to keep ourselves going in the interim. And we look at other countries, either the UK, US, the high numbers of infections, the high death rate, yet they're opening up their economies. The reason they're opening up is not because they think they've beaten the disease. Oh, yeah. It's because they think that they have to open up it to enable their society and economy to function.
No, look, that's exactly right. I mean, even rich countries like the US and Europe, at some point they have to reopen because the economic costs are just simply too great. And, we heard this week from the IMF, with their latest forecast, that it was pretty tragic reading. I mean, a $12 trillion of output is going to be wiped out from the world economy in just 2 years. And, that sounds all very academic to us, but they stressed in their report, kind of what this means for India, for the developing world. And it's just a shocking tragedy for these countries because, if you lose, 50% of your income and you're very, very poor, that's a disaster. In the rich world, we can afford job keepers, job seekers, etc., but they don't have that in the developing world. And so, quite literally, hundreds of millions of people could be, facing famine at some point in the next year or two because of this downturn. So certainly in those countries, they're going to have to open up. They can't really shut down in the first place. And I think even here, if there is another outbreak, it seems there is a kind of small outbreak in Melbourne. I think the idea that we lock down again, frankly, is fanciful, and it just won't happen.
Yeah, well, people are getting carried away with that at the moment. What's the potential for us to actually invigorate our economy behind our international borders? If we do open up freely enough across state borders and the like with domestic tourism and trade, surely we've got a fairly good chance of operating a reasonably robust economy because most of our exports will continue. Education is the one that's going to... Education and tourism will be hurt most.
Yeah, look, that's right. Actually, we think of ourselves as a great trading nation, and look, we are. But actually, if you add up our imports and exports as a share of GDP, it's kind of middle of the road or even kind of below average compared to other countries. So you're quite right. In some ways, we are self-sufficient. I mean, there are some levers the federal government can pull during this period. I mean, I think they should bring forward all of those legislated tax cuts to as soon as possible. There's some discussion, as you know, about reforming the award system. I think a simplification of those would be fantastic. I think state governments are thinking about reforming stamp duty. Government really needs to use this crisis to get through reforms that maybe they couldn't do in a normal circumstance. I think they're more likely to be able to pressure the opposition to agree when there is a crisis. But look, so far, I think to be fair, we haven't really seen too much of that. I mean, I'm shocked even that the government still defends the increase in the superannuation guarantee, which is just a ludicrous thing to do in such a weak economy. And yet it's scheduled to go up next year. And if you ask the Treasurer or the Prime Minister, they say they support it.
Adam Creighton, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.